hear us, and they'll come in and join us. So let's make a start. I hope you had a good break. Enjoyed the food. I certainly did. And we're looking forward to a really interesting afternoon. Let's start by introducing Tom Heinz. He's president of Heinz Incorporated, a coffee, cup, fuel stops, and convenience stores incorporated. Tom's 39-year business career has been in different segments of the petroleum industry. Co-founder and owner of
Point.
There we go. And PowerPoint. It's on its way. There we go. Thanks, Tom.
Okay, as Tim said, I'm Tom Heinz, president of Coffee Cup Travel Plazas out of Dakota Dunes, South Dakota. Today I'm going to be sharing with you our experience in providing customers DEF solutions in line with what our projected demand was, the DEF, the equipment that we chose and the reasons we chose it, and then our outlook as far as demand for DEF in our markets and for the Coffee Cup Travel Plazas. First, the Coffee Cup Travel Plazas, they're not a name brand recognized as many of our tier one truck stop travel plazas are, but I assure you we offer the same amenities out in serving the motoring public in South Dakota, North Dakota, and Wyoming. And a little bit of our marketing difference is we market straight number 1 and straight number 2 fuel. And we have for 35 years, and it's served us very well. As the gentleman with Penske Trucking talked about earlier, during the wintertime, straight number 2 can be challenging, and many of our tier 1 travel plazas don't have number 1. And in addition to that, now we have DEF on all of our islands and with card readers on all the islands. So the timing issue and equally important, in most cases, we're located in rural areas, so the time getting in and out of our facilities is a great deal less than those in the metropolitan areas. As far as how we determined, hopefully you can read it if you can, it's on your, you can download it. But anyway, Rentag, they provided us this ramp-up chart in, this one was revised in 2012, but they provided us the ramp-up chart in the latter part of 2011, which we based all of our decisions on in sizing our tanks and the number of dispensers we were going to put on the islands. And glaringly, with the volume of diesel we had at the time, it was apparent the best way for us to do it was just to go right in and put in the 10,000 gallon underground tanks. And so that's what we did. We did not use the other approach of putting in the totes or the Spatco systems with DEF on one island. We just started in 2012 is when we started it, and putting in the 10,000 gallon tanks and then DEF right on the islands. Some of our islands had already been modernized, so rather than busting up concrete to put in to allow for larger sumps, we simply extended the islands and put in a standalone DEF dispenser as illustrated here. And coincidentally, those locations that had been modernized that way, they had Wayne equipment on them, so the Wayne Vista dispenser served our purpose very well. And this is one of the promotional flyers from Wayne itself. This is a picture of one that's actually on our island, and it's not as clean as the one that Wayne provided me. But some of the positives of having the Wayne, the standalone dispenser, whether it's Wayne or Gilbarco or whoever, is you can pump, the driver can pump diesel and DEF at the same time. So especially out in our market during the winter months when you get those sub-zero temperatures and the wind blowing, it becomes a very valuable amenity that the driver doesn't want to be outside any longer than he has to. So that's important. And again, with the electronic log mandate, with this, that it helps speed up the process. One of the problems we've had with this dispenser, and that's the doors on the door springs. The door springs get sprung, and that's what closes the door. So again, in the winter months, this causes some issues. And to the most economical remedy I've found for it, we try to work with Wayne and get them to come up with a different door system. But I simply put in 110 plug-ins, and then we put in little 1250 watt heaters, and that has solved the problem for the most part. When it gets minus 30 below, or you get 30, 40 below wind chill factors, you still have issues with nozzles and hoses freezing up from time to time if the DEF doesn't get dispensed through them. The next dispenser we use quite widely on our new ones now, and that's the combination, the Encore DEF 1, which is pretty popular out in our market. In fact, it's pretty popular in the whole industry. And now, especially the Encore 700s, well, they did put them in the 500s as well, started to, but they make a Yukon kit. And what that is there's two heaters in it. And since Gilbarco come out with that Yukon kit, that's remedied our freeze-up problems, or mitigated our freeze-up problems immensely. Now Wayne has a Yukon kit in their new ones as well, but out in our market, it's done a good job. And again, one of the positives of this dispenser is your diesel and DEF are both both close together. So the tractor, it's not quite as critical where the tractor pulls up at as far as being able to dispense fuel. One of the negatives of this is if your meter is down, you can't pump DEF or diesel on that particular island. Or back on the other ones where you have the standalone DEF dispenser, if something is wrong with one of them, you can still pump diesel, or vice versa. If the diesel's down, you can still pump DEF. And again, this one here, the door closure is more user-friendly than the Wayne one, and so we don't have weather issues. We have minimum weather issues with that one. Let's see. The piping we use two different systems, and out there we depend heavily on we're a small chain, so we depend heavily on our distributors in the area, our petroleum distributors. So basically we've went with whatever they've kind of recommended, and we've always done a price comparison. They have them do a price comparison on the two different systems they offer. But the two different systems we use is one is the Franklin Fueling Systems recirculation system, and then the other one is the Omega Flex, which is a heat traced plumbing. This is an example, just an illustration of kind of what they both are. The Franklin Fueling System, the one is a single line. You can use it, or you can use it as a double wall pipe. We use the double wall so you can pull it out if you have to. In the recirculation system, it's simply like a boiler system. There's a temperature sensor on the last island, and when that sensor senses a fluid temperature of 36 degrees, it starts circulating. Your pump starts circulating, and you're using the same pump that you're dispensing, that runs your dispensers, so there's not an additional pump there. The Omega Flex, they use, their system primarily uses a primary pipe that's encapsulated in insulation, and then there's a heat traced heat traced wire that's in that as well that heats the fluid. With OmegaFlex, I've got Dean Rivas back here. He's the regional manager for OmegaFlex. So if you have any questions, technical questions, direct them to him, if you would, please. I'm just a practitioner. But anyway, OmegaFlex, they call their pipe Def Track. That's their new one that they have out. Here's a little bit more about the company. OmegaFlex, it's made in America, Exton, Pennsylvania. It's a publicly traded company. And again, on the depth side of it, you can get 1 inch all the way up to 2 inch, and that's the same with Franklin Fueling System. The testing agencies, which is important, that OmegaFlex uses. This slide here, this is again is a photo of the OmegaFlex piping, and as you can see, the wire, that wire there, that is the heat traced wire that runs that warms up the fluid as the temperature drops below 40 degrees. Theirs is set at 40 degrees, and the temperature sensor is mounted on the building or somewhere nearby. This would be a typical installation of ours, where we have straight number 1 and straight number 2. We use, like here would be a 10 or 20,000 gallon number 1 tank, and then we'll have 3 20,000 gallon number 2 diesel tanks, and we'll have a 10,000 gallon DEF tank. And here, like the pink line, that is your DEF line feeding your dispensers. In fact, this is OmegaFlex, where it, so you just got 1 pipe going down, and it zigzags through it. The reason we're zigzagged here because we have masters and slaves, so that's why you go back and forth. But here it's simply, you got, with OmegaFlex, you just simply have 1 pipe or 1 hose, and it runs all the way down and feeds your system. A very, very simplified way of doing it. I guess with OmegaFlex, and Dean can confirm this, but it's very important. One of the things that's very important is that everyone is trained. Both your electrician and your installers are trained on putting it in. We had one situation where the electrician didn't get, it wasn't anything wrong with OmegaFlex or the product, but the electrician had not wired it properly. And so it burnt through the piping, and needless to say, the electrician's insurance company ended up repiping our DEF system there. The other one we use is a Franklin Fueling System recirculation system, like I talked to you about before, which is basically kind of like a boiler in a house, where when the temperature falls below 36 degrees, that it just starts circulating. The Franklin Fueling System, besides just the piping, and they do have a whole complete fueling system, and the piping and tank monitor and the whole ball of wax. And here the TS550 Evo is really the brains of the system. That's what monitors your tank, monitors your temperature. We use this for our underground diesel and gas tank monitors as well. It combines the fuel management with DEF. Here, this slide simply, it's a sump at the top of the sump on top of the tank, and it's illustrating and where the DEF probes of the Franklin Fueling System, where the DEF probes and floats and sensors, they're not exposed to DEF, except they're the only ones that are exposed to DEF. The inventory probe and then the stainless steel float there. Whoops, I gotta go back. Right down there, those are the only 2 items that are exposed to the DEF. Everything else is above the tank. Again, this is part of the Franklin Fueling Systems, what they have to offer. The takeaway here is you can monitor the system remotely at your PC, which is the way we do it, at the PC at the store level, or you can monitor it on your mobile device, but we don't do that. Again, this is a little bit more about the Franklin fueling system. This is where it's coming up out of the tank, and this would be running over to your islands. This would be the line running to the islands, and this is where your heat sensor, temperature sensor would go. Right there, it's at your last island. And then the U, where this U is at, this is also at your last island. That's where it comes into the island, feeds your last dispenser, and then comes back, and this would be your return line that's going back to the tank. Again, this is the same thing. This is your temperature sensor here, which is in that standpipe right there. I keep talking about temperature sensors because, again, out in our country, it's very critical that everything is working when the temperatures fall. Although the product in the tank itself is normally around in that 50-degree range. So as we're selling more DEF, it becomes less critical, but you still have that period of time between midnight and 5 o'clock in the morning, and then on weekends when your sales are slower, that product has got to be kept above freezing, or you have problems. This would be an installation of, regardless whether you're using a Megaflex or the recirculation. This is what the first island would look like, the first sump. And the sump is, there's two sections to it. The right-hand section is the DEF section, and the left-hand section is the diesel section. So here you would see this would be the DEF line right there. And these two would be the diesel lines. Again, this would be just on your first dispenser. This would be, again, using the Franklin fueling system recirculation system. This is what your last plumbing on your last dispenser would look like, where, again, this is your DEF line going in, and you've made that U, as I illustrated before, and then this line is the one that's running back to the tank. These over here would be diesel lines. This would be an installation using the recirculation system. Again, it's the same, we have the same tank setup with the 10,000 gallon DEF, but you would have your line running down and going back here to your last dispenser, but then that's where it would make that U, and then the line just comes back to the tank. And again, so when that temperature falls below 36 degrees, it's just, you got a circulation system going on there. As far as price differential, like I said, we work with whatever distributor we have in the area. We work with them, and we ask them. They normally provide us a price comparison using both types of install, and so there's each install is different because it depends on the number of islands you got, how far you are from your tanks. And of course, up in our market, we have to allow for we either have to have a recirculation system or a Megaflex, one or the other, because we have the freezing issue, where when you move into a warmer climate, you don't have either one of those elements to deal with. So when it comes to costs, you just have to look at both of them and see which one makes the most sense. I assure you, they're both quality products, quality companies. So there's just two different options. Regarding projection where DEF usage is going forward, this is a illustration that was provided to me by American Trucking Association that I guess we've seen other illustrations like it the last the last day and a half, so I probably don't need to spend a lot of time going all the way through it. But the EIA, as many of you know, they're forecasting an increase in fuel efficiency of 20 to 25% by 2040. And interestingly, the ATA, they had it broken down where about 8% of that is going to come from modifications to the trailer, and the rest of it's going to come from modifications on the engine and then the tractor cab itself. So when I seen that, I thought it was very interesting, and that's why I wanted to share it with everyone. But I guess here, this being a DEF conference, I don't guess, this being a DEF conference, this area right here, fourth one down under the engine, improved emissions after treatment is the one that we're most concerned about. And again, that's what we've been hearing, the last day and a half about the increased dosage rate of how they're going to achieve those increased fuel mileages. Again, so our outlook for expansion of DEF, as I said, the EIA predicts fuel consumption to decline, or efficiencies per truck to decline nearly 20% by 2040. However, although fuel use per mile is decreasing, the same EIA administration predicts a 23% increase in diesel demand between 2015 and 2040. Thus, the EIA is clearly projecting far more transportation miles, according to NATSO's Roger Cole. Now, as Tim talked about this morning, maybe if there's not a direct correlation, if the correlation between increased GDP and fuel usage shrinks, as it possibly could because of how the GDP is affected by digital sales, then there may be more margin of error in this than we think. But again, efficiency targets have been linked to increased dosing rates to clean up the exhaust coming off the engine. Freightliner and Mack engineers are projecting DEF dosing rates to increase to 4 to 5% to reach the improved carbon footprint. Cummins has a ISX-15 engine out dosing 4% in the 4% range today. So, as I had said earlier, that the coffee cups, our sales ratio is 1% DEF to diesel sales. Our large competitors in the industry, it's my understanding, theirs is 1.75% to diesel sales. And the chart I had showed earlier that I don't think any of you could read or see, but Brenntag is forecasting a dosage rate of 2.5% by 2018. So looking at all those numbers, my back-of-the-envelope math suggests to me that the coffee cup travel plazas and probably other Tier 2 travel plazas, DEF volumes certainly have the potential to double by the year 2018, and then double again by the year 2040, if these assumptions that the EIA is making are correct. So with that, I want to make sure I get my sources up here, because as I said earlier, I'm a practitioner, so all this information, I received most of it from other companies. So if there's any practical applications that I can answer questions about, I'm happy to do so. But if you have a technical question, especially with the Megaflex, Dean is sitting right back here, so he can answer them on the spot. And other questions you can certainly direct to these companies.
Thanks, Tom. Yes, so we do have some time for questions, and we have one immediately, so go ahead, sir. Please.
So, John Rossiter, General Motors. So in your position, you're the front line with the customer. Mm-hmm. Based on what I see there, I'm not familiar with that. I'm from Canada, so I'm not familiar with Coffee Cup Travel Plaza, but do you see a fair amount of light duty or passenger car diesels come through there? Or is this something that is just heavy duty truck applications?
No, we got a lot of RVs and pickups. Cars not so much. Cars
okay, well, so light duty pickups is fine. So a lot of those systems, early systems were not necessarily designed with bulk fuel dispensing in mind. And so I'm just wondering if you've experienced customer complaints, customer issues. Do they, if you have, do they generally blame the vehicles or the dispensing equipment for any issues that may experience, like not being able to fill, premature shutoffs, or messes that are created? I'm wondering if you have any stories to tell about that.
No, we don't.
Tom, could you move to the microphone, sir, if you don't mind? Thank you.
No, we don't have a lot of complaints. In fact, I haven't fielded any. What is it? The Ford 250. They're the ones that they have the deaf inlet right alongside of the fill. And of course the RVs. As far as the cars, I haven't never seen a car. I don't even know if any of the cars are.
Chevy Cruze. Yeah.
Chevy Cruze does. Yeah, I haven't seen any car at a deaf dispenser. So I.
But you have seen regular pickup trucks coming in for deaf?
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Very interesting. Next question, please. I have a question, Tom. You illustrated very clearly one of your installations. You showed the site map of the layout. Mm-hmm. Have you put deaf only in locations where you've done a new build, or have you done some deaf installations at an existing facility? And could you comment on the relative difficulty of those?
What's the question again?
So you showed us it looked like a new truck stop you'd built with the fuel islands and so on, the investments in the DEF.
Okay.
Have you only put DEF in new locations, or have you also done some DEF at existing locations where you've had to kind of retrofit DEF into the existing fuel islands?
No, we've put them in all the locations. So as I showed you with the one Wayne Vista dispenser, so rather than busting up concrete and busting up islands, what we did is we just extended the island and put in the standalone dispenser.
And you put one on each island, or
yes.
is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, we put one on each island. Yeah, and we buried the 10,000 tank and then just run the line down in front.
Yeah.
Front of the islands, and it works very well. I mean, it's the most cost-effective way of doing it, because otherwise our other diesel dispensers, the sumps aren't big enough, so you got to bust up the whole island to put in that combination dispenser. So it's the most cost-effective way of doing it.
So how many locations do you have now which have DEF?
Nine. And we have DEF on the islands at all of them.
Wow.
So, and we're at the 1%, right at 1%. Anxious to see that grow.
I'm sure it will, yeah. Any other questions for Tom about his experience? Very practical experience of putting DEF. Could I ask a question just as a final, final point? Could you comment on the cost? Was it higher than you expected, or were you coming in at the costings you'd expected for all the fuel islands?
When you're dealing in the travel plaza industry, everything's a shock when it comes to cost. No, we had done our budgets as far as where it was going to do, what it was going to cost, and that's when we made the decision to just put in the 10,000 gallon tanks right out of the get and go, because previously I'd looked at going with the Spatco systems and putting it on one or two islands, but you ended up, even at that, spending $40,000 an island, and you had a 1,000 gallon tank. Where here we take 5,000 gallon loads. We get it much cheaper. We got some extra storage, because there are times when there hasn't or DEF hasn't. We haven't had any problem getting it. But here a couple of years ago during harvest, or when they shut down, CF shut down their plant for a period of time. So you got to have that storage so you don't have to bring it any farther than you have to. Yeah. So you can make sure that you can always take advantage of the best price and save on the freight.
And can you comment on your evaluation of the investment? So the kind of business case that you put together, was it based on the DEF product line being profitable on its own, or were you thinking more in terms of protecting your diesel volumes? What was your main motivation for the investment in DEF?
Well, the main motivation was I had seen it. I go on the international study tours that NACS puts on every year over in the UK and Ireland, in those other countries. And so I seen it years ago where they were, had the DEF over there. And of course, over there they don't have the volumes that we do here in the United States. But it became apparent to me that that's the route the industry was going to go for the emission, to meet the emission standards. So again, it became apparent that if we were going to stay in the industry, you don't have a choice. And because if you're not going to have DEF out on the islands to make it more convenient and make it as cost effective as you can for your customer, then you're not going to be in the business. So we just went from there. I mean, there's some things you just have to do, and that was one of them. But naturally, when we started deciding on putting our budget together on what it was going to cost to put it in, we certainly looked at the ROI and tried to figure out where it was going to be.
And is that tracking the kind of development you expected? Looking back, have you seen the kind of DEF volumes and diesel volumes that you'd projected in your business plan?
No, it's tracking right on.
It's tracking on.
Yeah. It's it's tracking right on.
Very good. Any more questions before we move? No. In that case, Tom, fascinating. Thanks very much for presenting that. Thank you. Another very important topic, which I'm very glad we're addressing, and therefore very glad to welcome Beth Whitehead to the stage. She's joining us now. She's from Union Pacific Railroad, and she's going to be taking us through DEF distribution